Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over the top 10 best aircraft in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. Now these aircraft are getting ranked based on how useful they are in a general sense in PvP, if they're good at very certain things, if they're good in general, stuff like that. So anyway guys, we're going to start off with number 10. Alright guys, at number 10 we have the Annihilator Stealth. Now the Annihilator Stealth gets destroyed all the time. And I understand why people don't like the Annihilator Stealth, but at the same time, it's not that bad of a helicopter. If you guys didn't know, the Annihilator Stealth has stealth mode very similar to the AUKUS, which allows you to go completely off of the radar. Of course, when you're out of stealth mode, the Annihilator gets access to machine guns as well as rocket pods. You can of course have homing missiles on this. I can't really remember if there is a barrage option. I kind of feel like there is, but I could be wrong for sure. Now, the Annihilator Stealth is not that special of a helicopter other than the fact that it gets stealth mode like the AUKUS. However, it is a fast enough helicopter. In my opinion, it can seat 6 people, it's armed, and it does have a pretty cool function that allows somebody to rappel out of the back of the aircraft, which I think is probably this thing's coolest feature. Overall, the Annihilator Stealth is not as bad as people make it seem. It does have kind of weak armor, but at the same time, most aircraft do anyways. Overall, the Annihilator Stealth, I do feel like it deserves to be on this list, and of course it's not the best ever, so that's why it's a number 10. Anyway guys, with all that being said, let's move on to number 9. Alright guys, next up at number 9 we have the Savage. Now the Savage has basically one really good feature. It actually does have a tiny bit of armor. It's not very great. Like, I think this thing can maybe take one homing missile, but you have to kind of get lucky with it. But the main feature about why the Savage is on this list is because of its main armament, which of course is the autocannon. As you guys can see here, it's hyper lethal. It is infinite. You can literally keep shooting this thing constantly, and you do not have to stop until obviously the vehicle gets blown up. The Savage is really only on this list for, this reason, albeit it's a pretty good reason. The autocannon on this thing is crazy good, ridiculously good. You can absolutely shred players with it. Obviously, you can shred civilians, as you guys can see right here. The Savage is just, it's a crazy good helicopter. Now, the problem is the Savage is quite a big helicopter, and it's not exactly what you would call maneuverable. You know, it does have its problems, it has its trade-offs. It's also not the fastest helicopter either, and it really doesn't have very good handling, especially when you compare it to something like the Sparrow or the AUKUS. The Savage definitely feels like an older helicopter, that's for sure, but it does have really good guns on it, which allow the Savage to still be kind of a relevant helicopter in the game these days, and more than that, a relevant aircraft. Now, you don't often see somebody using this thing, but you do see somebody using it occasionally, and I always respect somebody who still uses a Savage in this game. I think that it is still a pretty respectable vehicle. Anyway guys, that is it for the Savage at number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Alright guys, next up at number 8 we of course have the Rogue. Now the Rogue is on this list because, well, I feel like it is a pretty darn good plane for dogfighting and for fighting other planes. That's sort of this thing's niche. Obviously you can attack ground targets as well. It does have an autocannon, albeit it's not nearly as good as the Savages, but it does have a little bit more range. Of course the Rogue also has missiles as well as homing missiles, which are, very nice to have for sure. The Rogue is of course customizable with handling. If you want it to have race handling, you can, or you can have, basic handling. So you can kind of make this thing a little bit crazy, very responsive. I have race handling on mine, and it definitely makes the plane fly a little bit more interesting. I don't know that I would say better, but more interesting for sure. The Rogue is also one of the only 2-seater planes in the game. And I know there's planes with more than 2 seats, but as far as actual 2-seaters go, I think that the Rogue might actually be the only plane in the game that is a 2-seater. So that makes it a little bit interesting, and it's also quite a fast plane, and it's also like an attack style plane. I'm not going to call it a fighter jet or anything like that. Maybe a fighter plane, I guess. Obviously it's not a jet. So having the extra seat is kind of nice. You can carry somebody with you when you're fighting, and they can of course jump out whenever they want to. Say you're fighting somebody, you got someone with you, you start attacking them, you blow up their vehicle, your co-pilot jumps out, gets on the ground, starts fighting them on the ground while you're in the air. The Rogue is tactical, man. This is a really good plane. It's also pretty fast. I mean, it's definitely not like as fast as the Hydra or the laser, but it is pretty quick for what it is. Overall, the Rogue is a very, very good plane. I would definitely recommend picking one of these things up if you don't have one already. It's also relatively cheap, coming in at about 1.5 million for the trade price, I want to say. So that's pretty darn good. Anyway, guys, that is it for the Rogue at number 8. Let's move on to number 7. Alright guys, next up at number 7, we of course have the B-11 Strike Force. Now the B-11 is the most well-armed plane in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. It has access to bombs, as you guys can see right now. I'm just gonna nuke these guys real quick. On top of that, it also has access to an explosive autocannon that sounds like it's shooting a lot faster than it actually is. Now the autocannon completely sucks, especially against actual players. I think you have to hit them with 2 of these to actually kill them, so it's not great. Although the cannon does definitely sound really, really sick. It's of course based off of the A10 Warthog, this plane, and the cannon definitely shares the sound with the A10 Warthog. However, the cannon is nowhere near as good as the A10 Warthog's cannon in real life, unfortunately, so that does kind of suck. Now on top of that, this thing also does have homing missiles, which are very, very good. As you guys can see, I just destroyed a signal jammer. I guess I haven't done that yet. So it's got homing missiles, and then of course it also has a barrage. As you guys can see, it is a 7 missile barrage. It's the same one that the FH1 Hunter gets access to, which is a very nice feature for a plane. You can do some serious damage with this. So the barrage is definitely a pretty sick feature. Homing missiles as well, and the missiles, like, you can't really go wrong with this thing. It's got kind of everything. Now on top of this, the B-11 is also an armored plane, and it does have upgrades. You can put engine upgrades on this thing, you can put handling upgrades on this thing, you can obviously put liveries on it, you can customize the colors of it. Same with every other, vehicle that you can bring into the aircraft workshop. Another cool feature about the B-11 is the higher up that you fly this thing, the faster the plane goes, and the closer to the ground you go, the slower the B-11 goes. So the B-11 is definitely a really, really good attack style plane in GTA, that is for sure. Definitely I would recommend picking up a B-11. However, there are some vehicles on this list further ahead that I would recommend picking up more so than this thing. So maybe just wait a minute before you go out and blow some money. Let's move on to number 6. Alright guys, of course next up we have the Avenger. Now the Avenger is the most armored air vehicle in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. It also is very, very well armed, and it's also very, very quick. The Avenger has a lot of really good features. Of course, it also acts as an air MOC, which is, another great feature. The Avenger also has a VTOL mode, as you guys can see right here, but you can of course switch it into actual aircraft mode. It also has bombs on the bottom of it that you can drop. There's a lot of features with the Avenger, guys. There's a lot of features. Of course, you can also turn it into plane mode, and this is how it becomes such a fast vehicle. The Avenger can pretty much outrun anything in Grand Theft Auto Online. There have been several times where I've had lasers chasing me, stuff like that, and I get away from them in the Avenger. I don't use this thing all that often, but I've definitely also been on the chasing end of an Avenger, and unless the pilot is a complete goof or they want to get killed, if they're flying away from you, you're probably not going to catch them, unfortunately. Now, in combination with the great armor, of course, the Avenger is quite the force to be reckoned with. As you guys can see, it's also got these guns that I mentioned before, one on the top, one on the back here, and then one on the front under the nose. Those guns are insanely good. If you put the Avenger into auto hover mode or autopilot mode and get it to just sit still, and you hop in the guns over top of some people that you're trying to fight, you can pretty much spawn kill them continuously until they spawn far enough away to be out of range of your cannons. And if that happens, you just kind of move the thing over and keep going on them. Overall, the Avenger is a very solid aircraft. There's so much good about this aircraft that there's really nothing bad that I can think of other than, like, it's huge. That's not even that bad of a thing, really. Overall, the Avenger is it's a pretty great vehicle. I would definitely recommend getting one of these, especially if you don't have an MOC yet. I would say get the Avenger. It's really, really useful. The MOC is useful in its own right, but the Avenger I feel like has more uses, potentially. So anyway guys, that is it for number 6. Let's move on to number 5. Alright guys, next up at number 5, we of course have the Laser. Now the Laser is an absolutely fantastic jet. I'm sure most of you guys have probably flown a Laser at some point within your time in Grand Theft Auto Online. Of course, you can steal these from the military base very, very easily if you know what you're doing. Or you can of course purchase this in Grand Theft Auto Online for $6,500,000. $500,000, which is what I did. I don't really know why I did that, because I've probably actually called this thing in a total of maybe 20 times ever. Buying the laser in GTA Online is kind of a huge waste of money, unless your hangar is like in Los Santos and you just don't want to come up to the military base to steal them anymore. I can't really see a reason to buy this thing. It's cool to be able to customize it and change the color and whatnot, but you can of course just come up to the military base and steal one from there. My hangar is even inside the military base, so I can literally come in here, get into the gates, and then just steal one. There's like kind of no downside to that instead of buying one, so I would just consider stealing them instead of buying them. However, the laser is a very, very good plane. It has a autocannon. It has the same autocannon as the Savage, just with more range actually, which is it's very good. The laser is also quite a maneuverable plane. You can dogfight pretty well with the laser. You will beat most planes in the game, with the exception of probably the Starling, I would say. Now, unfortunately, the laser does not have any armor whatsoever, so if you get hit by one explosive round from a heavy sniper, your jet is going to crash. If you get hit by one RPG, you're obviously going to crash. One homing launcher, you're going to crash. The laser doesn't have any armor, but it does have insanely good maneuverability where you can outrun a homing missile most of the time. And of course, it does have this gun, so most of the time you will have killed whoever is trying to shoot at you by the time they go to shoot at you anyway. So the laser is a very, very solid plane, and especially it's a great plane for one that you can just go to the military base and steal, and it doesn't really cost you any money. So that is what I would recommend doing with the laser. I would not recommend buying one. It's kind of a waste, at least for me personally. I don't really love the laser that much, but it is a really, really good plane nonetheless. Anyway guys, that is it for number 5. Let's move on to number 4. Alright guys, at number 4 we have the Sparrow from within the Kasatka. So unfortunately you have to have a Kasatka to actually have the Sparrow, which it's going to cost you a bit of money. However, the Sparrow is one of the best helicopters in Grand Theft Auto Online, one of the most convenient. You can of course spawn this thing from your interaction menu, which is kind of helpful a lot of the time, and it will spawn like right beside you as well. So there's really no downsides to the Sparrow when it comes to getting it. It's very simple to get. Of course, it is also the fastest helicopter in Grand Theft Auto Online. The Sparrow is equipable with machine guns or with missiles, and the missiles are definitely the option to go for, I would say. It has exceptional handling as well. The Sparrow is super maneuverable. You can get in between buildings so easily, which of course means you can get away from other players easily, or you can chase them pretty easily too. The Sparrow is definitely a helicopter that I would recommend picking up. It's going to make your life a lot easier, especially if you're grinding KO Perico. If you don't have a Sparrow and you're grinding KO Perico, I don't really know what to tell you, but you're doing something wrong there, pal. The Sparrow is a fantastic helicopter. You guys should definitely buy one if you don't have one already somehow. Such a good helicopter. With that being said, let's move on to number 3. Alright guys, at number 3 we of course have the FH1 Hunter. Now the Hunter is a phenomenal aircraft in GTA Online. I mean, I would say that it probably is the best offensive helicopter in the entire game. One of the best offensive vehicles in the entire game. Of course, the pilot gets access to a 7 missile barrage, which is extremely good. Of course, the pilot also gets access to homing missiles, which are also very, very good. And completely spammable, by the way, if you guys didn't know that. The Hunter is also relatively well armored for a helicopter. This thing can take about 3 homing missiles before it will go down, which is pretty good. Of course, the pilot also has access to bombs, which are, of course, very nice to have just in case. You never know when you're going to need to bomb somebody. Passenger in the FH1 Hunter, things get even better. You of course get access to a autocannon grenade launcher, which is very good. It can one-shot a player, which isn't overpowered at all, and it also has very good range, which also isn't overpowered at all. The Hunter's a little bit unfair PvPing somebody who's just walking around on the ground, or you've got them out of a vehicle and you're fighting them with the Hunter. They're gonna have a bad day. The Hunter is really, really good. It is also the 3rd or 4th fastest helicopter in the entire game, so really the Hunter has almost nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to complain about, that's for sure, just in comparison to some of the other helicopters in the game. It is missing some features that would be very nice, but I can see why it doesn't have it, because it would honestly just be too overpowered. Overall, the Hunter is definitely a helicopter that I would recommend picking up in GTA, more so than any other helicopter or vehicle that has been on this list so far. The Hunter is absolutely fantastic, even if you're running it solo. The barrage pretty much makes it worth it. But of course, if you do have a passenger, you guys are gonna, you can mess up a session pretty quickly. I don't advise griefing. Griefing is, you know, not cool, but if there's griefers that need to be killed in the session, the Hunter will do a very, very good job of that. Anyway guys, that is it for number 3. Let's move on to number 2. Alright guys, at number 2 we of course have the AUKUS. This is my favorite helicopter in Grand Theft Auto Online, and it's very similar to the Annihilator Stealth. It has stealth mode, so when stealth mode is activated, you are completely removed from the radar. Nobody can see you. Nobody knows where you are unless they can actually physically see your helicopter with their own 2 eyes. But other than that, they have no idea where you are. Of course, when the AUKUS is out of stealth mode, it gets access to machine guns or homing missiles or an optional barrage. Now, the barrage on the AUKUS is only a 4 missile barrage, so it's got 3 less than the Hunter and the B-11 Strike Force, so it's a little bit weaker offensively, we'll say. On top of all of the other great options with the AUKUS, it also gets access to bombs, which is very, very nice. Very similar to some of the other more offensive helicopters in the list. It is nice to have the ability to drop bombs, of course. The AUKUS also has engine upgrades as well as handling upgrades. You can obviously change the livery and the color of this thing as well. The AUKUS is cool also because it has armor. It can take just as many shots as the Hunter, which is about 3 homing missiles before it actually goes down. Of course, the AUKUS is also a 4-seater, so you can transport a few of your friends around off of the radar, of course. And the co-pilot of the helicopter gets access to the dual 50 cal miniguns on the bottom of the hull there. Overall, the AUKUS is an absolutely fantastic helicopter. This is the helicopter that I recommend buying the most out of all of the helicopters in Grand Theft Auto Online. The AUKUS is absolutely fantastic. So damn good. Anyway guys, that is it for number 2. Let's move on to number 1. Alright guys, and at number 1 we of course have the Hydra. The Hydra is my favorite aircraft in Grand Theft Auto Online, and I personally think it is one of the best aircraft in the entire game. Now, in terms of dogfighting, the Hydra is not the best. It has less than optimal turning. It's also not that fast when you just start going. However, the Hydra is actually one of the fastest jets in the entire game once you get moving. But the things that make the Hydra so good in this game are not to do with its ability to dogfight or its handling. They're to do with a couple of other things. Namely, it has the same cannon as the Laser and the Savage, but except with more range than the Savage. So the Hydra's cannon is absolutely fantastic. The Hydra has the exact same armor as the Laser as well, but what differentiates the Hydra from the Laser is that the Hydra has a VTOL mode, which I'm sure many of you guys are aware, but in case you weren't, the Hydra, yeah, it has VTOL mode. So you can hover and shoot your gun. You can shoot your homing missiles, you can shoot your missiles without homing, you can do any of that sort of stuff while in hover mode. So the Hydra makes doing missions like Headhunter, or missions where you have opponents that are in like a little nook or a cranny, the Hydra makes doing those sort of missions a little bit easier. Or if you're fighting people who are hiding in kind of cheap little places, the Hydra usually can get into a lot of places that most planes in the game and even some helicopters can't get to. Of course, the Hydra also can get there very, very quickly, being that it is one of the fastest vehicles in the entire game. And in my opinion, the Hydra is also just such a good looking plane. Now, I am a bit personally biased in putting this thing at number 1. I absolutely adore the Hydra. I've had one ever since it came out, and I love this thing. I fly it all the time. I probably fly it more than anything else in the entire game. I definitely do have a personal bias when it comes to the Hydra. However, I do feel like it truly is one of the greatest aircraft in the entire game, and I would definitely recommend picking it up. It comes in at just $3 million, which is pretty cheap considering it is $3.5 million less than the Laser, that's crazy in my opinion. And the Hydra also, in my opinion, is a lot better than the Laser simply because of the VTOL mode. If you want a dogfight though or something like that, then I would definitely take the Laser over the Hydra. But for the most part, I do believe that the Hydra is, in general, the best plane in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now, of course, you can argue with me in the comments about that is fair enough. Just my personal opinion, I know for dogfighting, the Hydra is not going to win very much of the time. The Starling, for example, is an absolutely great dogfighter. If you guys want kind of the best dogfighter in GTA Online, the Starling is probably that. If not, the Laser is really, really good as well. There's a lot of really good planes in the game, but in my opinion, the Hydra is kind of the most useful out of most of them. Definitely pick up a Hydra and definitely pick up an AUKUS if you don't have either of them. Those are my two recommendations, and if you already have both of them, I would say get the FH1 Hunter. It is also really, really exceptional. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.